The other day, another unhinged and unmitigated disaster of a press conference involving our current sitting president, where he said things like this.
Your reaction to Michelle King, the head resigning after the DOGE?
Who resigned?
The head of Social Security.
I don't know. I mean, I resigned or got fired.
Mr. President, given your concerns about corruption, you said that if there were any conflicts of interest with Elon Musk, you wouldn't let him anywhere near it.
That's right.
DOGE and SpaceX employees are now working directly at the Federal Aviation Administration and the Defense Department, agencies that have billions of dollars in contracts with Musk's companies or that directly regulate his companies. How is that not a conflict of interest?
Well, I mean, I'm just hearing about it.
Well, that's reassuring, isn't it? The sitting president of the United States just openly admitting that it's hard to be concerned about blatant conflicts of interest when one doesn't know about blatant conflicts of interest. And if you're wondering, well, maybe those with direct lines to the president could brief him on the matter. I give you said people with direct lines to the president.
So who is in charge of DOGE?
The President of the United States.
He's the administrator of DOGE?
No, the DOGE is what was formerly U.S. Digital Services. It's an agency of the federal government that reports into the executive office of the president, which reports to the President of the United States.
Okay.
The way that Article 2 works is a president wins an election, and then he appoints staff, including myself, including Mike Waltz, including Susie Wiles, including Elon Musk, and those staff report to him.
Okay, well aware. So Elon Musk a week ago answered a question about transparency at DOGE. This is how he spoke about DOGE.
Well, we actually are trying to be as transparent as possible. In fact, we post our actions to the DOGE handle on X and to the DOGE website. So all of our actions are maximally transparent.
You hear him there. We post our actions. All of our actions are maximally transparent. Does Elon Musk know he's not in charge of DOGE?
Now, if you missed Trump's presser today, it was a doozy, and I won't subject you to all of it, just the cliff notes. We now have to be worried about millions of 100-year-olds in the country, I think.
But when I saw the Social Security numbers, I said, wow, that's really something. So let's just go above 100 years old. We have millions and millions of people over 100 years old. Everybody knows that's not so. We have a very corrupt country. Very corrupt country, and it's a sad thing to say, but we're figuring it out. Now, the good thing about Social Security and what I read is if you take all of those numbers off, because they're obviously fraudulent or incompetent, but if you take all of those millions of people off Social Security, all of a sudden we have a very powerful Social Security with people that are 80 and 70 and 90, but not 200 years old. So it's a very positive thing. How about over here? Yeah.
During one particular part of the procession, Donald Trump mentions removing fraudulent accounts from Social Security and how that would make the system powerful, only to follow that up with a weave into whether those accounts ever received payments.
But when I saw the Social Security numbers, I said, wow, that's really something. So let's just go above 100 years old. We have millions and millions of people over 100 years old. Everybody knows that's not so. We have a very corrupt country, and it's a sad thing to say, but we're figuring it out. Now, the good thing about Social Security and what I read is if you take all of those numbers off, because they're obviously fraudulent or incompetent, but if you take all of those millions of people off Social Security, all of a sudden we have a very powerful Social Security with people that are 80 and 70 and 90, but not 200 years old. So it's a very positive thing. How about over here? You get fired. Who would keep them? How could you have numbers like this? Now, the big thing is how many of these people got paid? Were they getting paid? Were they getting paid? How many of them were getting paid Social Security? Because if that's the case, it's a massive fraud.
So let me get this straight. We get rid of the fraudulent accounts receiving no money to save money. Anything else? Oh yeah, he's all but singing the Russian national anthem at this point.
Thank you. Yes.
We're hearing that Russia wants to force Ukraine to hold new elections in order to sign any kind of a peace deal. Is that something that the U.S. would ever support?
Well, we have a situation where we haven't had elections in Ukraine, where we have martial law, essentially martial law in Ukraine, where the leader in Ukraine, I mean, I hate to say it, but he's down at 4% approval rating, and where a country has been blown to smithereens. You got most of the cities are laying on their sides. The buildings are collapsed. It looks like a massive demolition site. So many of the cities. I mean, they haven't done it in Kiev because I guess they don't want to shoot too many rockets in there. They've done it 20%, but they haven't done it 100%. If they wanted to do it 100%, it would probably happen very quickly. But you have cities that are absolutely decimated. And yeah, I would say that, when they want a seat at the table, you could say the people wouldn't the people of Ukraine have to say, it's been a long time since we've had an election. That's not a Russia thing. That's something coming from me and coming from many other countries also. Ukraine is being just wiped out. Look at what's happening to the cities. There are cities, there's not even a building standing. It's a massive, you talk about Gaza. I mean, it's literally, these cities look like Gaza.
But in one profound moment, Trump made the staggering admission that he's frankly unaware that DOGE and SpaceX employees are now working directly at agencies that have billions of dollars in contracts with Musk's companies or oversee regulation involving his companies, because that's not in-your-face corruption, right?
Mr. President, given your concerns about corruption, you said that if there were any conflicts of interest with Elon Musk, you wouldn't let him anywhere near it.
That's right.
DOGE and SpaceX employees are now working directly at the Federal Aviation Administration and the Defense Department, agencies that have billions of dollars in contracts with Musk's companies or that directly regulate his companies. How is that not a conflict of interest?
Well, I mean, I'm just hearing about it. And if there is, and he told me before I told him, but obviously I will not let there be any conflict of interest. He's done an amazing job. They've revealed, in fact, he's going to be on tonight, a big show called Sean Hannity at 9:00. And he's on and I'm on and we talk about a lot of different things. And any conflicts, I told Elon, any conflicts, you can't have anything to do with that. So anything to do with possibly even space, we won't let Elon partake in that.
What are you going to tell me next? The chair of the DOGE subcommittee invested thousands in Tesla stock shortly after being named to said committee. Yeah, I'm talking about you, March.
I am shocked. Shocked. Well, not that shocked.
And the lack of transparency becomes even more profound when you take this interview Stephen Miller gave on CNN. The man literally has no clue who's in charge of DOGE, who's overseeing their practices, who's regulating, what day it is. I mean, he just doesn't have a Scooby. And what did Trumpers do when they're exposed? They attack.
Know about this. They were fired. The agency had to rescind those terminations because these were employees who were critical to maintaining the nation's nuclear stockpile. So then who is it making those decisions of which federal employees are terminated?
Well, in that case, the Secretary of Energy would be the one. So what you're describing with the cuts in the Department of Energy, those are directed by the Senate-confirmed Secretary of Energy.
Okay, so that was the Secretary of Energy's mistake.
Well, I wouldn't use the term mistake. I would say that it's pretty standard when you're downsizing government. You make cuts, you assess those cuts, you see who needs to be rehired, who needs to be kept, who needs to be
That's not what happened here, though, Stephen. You know that. They were rescinded. These aren't normal things. These were terminations that were rescinded.
I understand that even a temporary interruption in federal employment is a great crisis and catastrophe for you and for CNN.
Stephen, it seems like the crisis here had to do with the nation's nuclear stockpile. And for these particular federal workers, which I'm not, so this isn't my personal crisis, military members of the Guard and the Reserve. I don't think it's a crisis, and you don't think it's hold on. I don't think it's a crisis, and you don't think it's a crisis. Then why are we talking about it? It is a crisis for some people. For instance, military members.
But you just said you didn't think it was a crisis.
It's not my crisis, Stephen. I'm not a federal employee.
Okay, so I don't think it's a crisis, and you don't think it's a crisis, so no one thinks it's a crisis.
It's not my personal crisis of employment. If you have concerns about the nation's nuclear stockpile, then it is obviously a crisis.
The concerns when it comes to
Stephen, please, we're getting off track.
Nuclear weapons, I think.
Stephen, this is a very important question.
Well, you want to talk about nuclear security? I'm happy to. the nuclear stockpile in this country has been aging and unmonitored for years.
And this doesn't help clear up what many Democrats have been suggesting when asked their views on DOGE. Where's the transparency? What is actually going on and who's in charge? Because at this point, we just don't know.
You need to talk about the 3,400 people from the fire service that were fired. For instance, I mean, Donald Trump was out in California talking about how we need more people working on this, that you need to be raking the leaves. Then we're firing people. There, 57% of the land in California is run by the federal government. So you need to do that. Firing these disease detectives when we have measles outbreaks. You could talk about that. Go out to your home constituents and talk about that. The nuclear weapons workers that were fired and then they had to get rehired because that was a mistake. Or even on a day like today, and I understand that the plane flipped over in Canada, that they're firing air traffic controllers and they're showing no cause, not based on performance or conduct for doing that. They did it Friday night on Valentine's Day at 7 p.m. So
not
you talk
Valentine's
about
Day.
The best day of the year. No, but those are real stories that are affecting Americans on the ground.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.